This is Comic Shenanigans, episode 1111, Book of the Month Club, Incredible Hulk vs. Superman.
Ain't no stopping them shenanigans. Love getting into shenanigans. All up in them shenanigans. 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 Shenanigans.
Welcome to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. I'm your host, Adam Chapman. This is episode 1111. This is Book of the Month Club, focusing on Incredible Hulk vs. Superman from 1999. I'm your host, Adam Chapman, joined by my Book of the Month co-host, Nathan Struck. Nathan, say hello to the fine people.
Hi, this is Nathan Struck, alter ego of Nathan Struck.
So, this is Book of the Month Club. We had promised a return to the Cullen Saga. That has been waylaid. So that will be pushed back a month or two. Instead, we're going to be once again diving into our DC versus Marvel omnibus, which we are slowly justifying the purchase of by recapping every story in here at some point or other. So we had also talked about doing something that I thought would be a little cool and different, which was focusing on baseball-related comics because it's the end of the regular season. But then I did not expect Paul to have more of an interest in potentially doing that, so we're postponing that till October when he's able to do that. So we're talking instead today about the Incredible Hulk versus Superman. I guess the actual name of the story is Double Lives. Written by Roger Stern, artwork by Steve Rude, inked by Al Milgrom, lettered by Jim Novak, and Steve Oliff provides the colors. And this is it's interesting, with acknowledgement to the work of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and of course Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. So this comes out in '99, as I was mentioning off podcast. This was the second last of the kind of proper crossovers that we got during the 90s period, where we had a glut of these crossovers kind of pushed out. And then we'd have a couple of years where there wouldn't be one until we had JLA Avengers, which instead of being a one-shot was a 4-part miniseries. And then that was it for basically 21 years. Until as of recording last week when we had the first crossover of Deadpool and Batman. I forget the naming convention because we're getting two of them. One is Deadpool Batman, one of them is Batman Deadpool. And it was one of them came out last week, so that finally ended the 21-year drought. I think JLA Avengers was 2004, I could be wrong, but a very long drought. So this was the second last of these, the kind of the glut of the 90s in terms of all these one-shots. And I think to me, really is a fascinating choice because Roger Stern has a history with both the Hulk and with Superman, so he's not fascinating per se, although he wasn't as much, the big name of the time. He had kind of started to segue into being the older veteran that you didn't see as much anymore after being very prominent in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and especially having done a lot of Superman work earlier in the 90s, but he had started to kind of phase out a little bit. And you have Steve Rude, a guy who doesn't do a lot of superhero comics, is well known for doing Nexus, but, has done a couple superhero projects here and there, but isn't particularly well known for doing them. So, curious, what did you think about this pairing of creatives? Now that I'll finally let you speak.
It's fine. We have double lives, double comments. I gotta time it so I can speak equally to you.
Okay, good.
Maybe I'm your alt or vice versa. I don't know, but Roger Stern. Yeah, I guess he's a dependable talent. It is surprising, I guess, considering the era '99. Right, there's a number of hot writers at the time that they could have pulled from. I don't know what the inner workings were, like who gets to say, "Hey, I'm in," or "I want to take that project," but. Steve Rude's art makes this a joy to read in a way I don't think it would have otherwise been. No, I'm confident it wouldn't otherwise have been as enjoyable. I have nothing against Stern, but the real magic here is Rude's storytelling. Like the choices of deep blacks, which Milgrom does a great job inking. Even from like the second page when. Clark and Lois are looking at the TV, and the kind of squiggly lines coming off of that TV are seen in almost this kind of shadowy of the light cast on their face, and this kind of almost Vertigo-like Outer Limits kind of style image, which is also like this is before a flashback, so it's kind of giving you this like very, very creative storytelling in that way. Even like the lining on the couch in the first page, or maybe or 2 pages. Again, has this kind of '60s vibe, otherworldly feel. Again, Outer Limits. And as we were talking really briefly off air, there's a whole set of like anachronisms going on in this comic, right? It is set in the past, but they have cell phones. It's set in the Marvel and DC universes, but it's not set in either of those universes. Characters that have never met, and characters have also met each other, right? That's, of course, they've never actually met in our continuity. So yeah, there's this wonderful kind of 60s feel to it, but they are absolutely updating it at the same time. So yeah, artistically, really, really loved it.
It's interesting that page you mentioned where you see the kind of the circles on their faces. It's a really nice parallel to the panel right before it, right? Because you have like he's giving you reference, so you understand like it's not just a weird thing on their face; it's literally what they're watching. But yeah, the way it cascades on them is a really interesting effect, which I don't know if many people would have thought to do that. Like there's a bunch of choices here where I'm like, that's a very definitive choice that I don't think would have ever been in anyone's script. And I don't think Roger Stern, especially at this point, would have done full scripts. I think he would have been detailed plot, but I don't think it would have been full script. And I feel like I need to talk to Roger at some point and maybe reach out to him and see, like, I'd be curious how much of this was just artist driven in terms of like, I want to do a throwback type of story, like, or maybe I need to talk to the editor, like who edited this book. I'm not even sure because it has book design. Like I don't think we see all the all the people. I guess it's actually Glenn Greenberg and Tom Brevoort are listed as editors on the Marvel Comics side. So I guess I could actually just talk to Glenn because I always message Glenn, so hey, I've got questions about this book. But yeah, like it just really made me wonder, like the decision to make it kind of a throwback, kind of 60s style or like early in their careers type of story, really feels like it plays into Rude's strengths as an artist and allows him to kind of lean into his style without feeling like he has to make it modern, quote unquote, like whatever a modern style is. It's not worried about that. It gets to kind of live in this almost Schuster and Siegel-ish Superman, although obviously not quite the original, but close to that idea, and even a very kind of early Jack Kirby Hulk. His design, he's not necessarily always the biggest, or he doesn't look as big as we're used to the Hulk being, but he just kind of, he looks bigger. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, there's, like, it's just a series of homages, right? Like, even on the first page when it shows a shot of the Avengers, which would have, it's very clearly very early on in the Hulk's career, and then if there had been time between, which of course there ostensibly is here, when he leaves that team and when the version of the Hulk you're reading appears, there's usually a stylistic change, right? But because he's doing an homage to Kirby, the Hulk you see immediately afterwards is the same Hulk. It's the same guy. He hasn't aged. He hasn't moved from the Kirby era. He's entrenched in it. And you're right. There's a lack of definition on Superman's rendering. He has some curvature for his biceps and maybe for his chest muscles, but there's nothing close to what he'll later on be drawn with the over rendering and rippling muscles. It really feels like he has cotton on, or maybe even a little stretchy clothing, very much like a strongman costume that Siegel and Schuster used for the original costume. The S is different. It's a modern S. It has the yellow golden S on the back. Those are modern updates, but it has the short cape. So there's a number of things about the rendering that, very much like a 30s, 40s callback. So yeah, it's very purposely done, and it just seems like Rude is having a lot of fun playing with maybe some of his idols. And you can even see it really early on as well on page, around 2, 3, 4, when we see the cave. And again, referencing to Bruce being in the cave and spending nights in the cave because that's when the Hulk comes out. That's also very, very early Hulk. And later on we find that he hasn't really even started dating Betty yet. But these machines are classic Kirby machines. These overly complicated, even beyond Rube Goldberg machines, shape within shape within shape, impossible and zany. And then later on, when we get to, I'm not going to count the pages here because they have collection pages, but not the comic page. A shot of Lex's machines, his military vehicles that are in the military, that he's sold to the military base. And then it goes into showing us the Gamma gun, or the Gamma gun. there's a decision made here, and I don't know exactly why Rube does this, but it's like he's almost transitioned now. He's like, okay, now I'm going to move away from the Kirby crazy quirky machines to like a classic 30s sci-fi DC Flash Gordon, spiring towers and electrical coils. I mean, so you see the gun. It's got this. There's almost no Kirby-esque thing about it. It's very like gear-based and like star kind of patterns on parts of the guns. And again, these coils, these Tesla coils wrapping around it. So it has this kind of, again, this pulp action hero 30s sci-fi vibe, which feels very Superman, right? And DC. So it just seems like he's making these very purposeful choices to kind of go, this is a blending of DC and Marvel, and I'm going to pull from inspirations, even just for the machines, for the sci-fi stuff. So it's really a spectacle for the eyes. It's just, I'm sorry, I just have to say, it's so much more enjoyable than the script. The script is kind of like ho-hum. I am happy for Stern's restraint. I'm glad it's not just a smash up. I'm glad it's not a who has bigger muscles, who can hit harder. A lot of fans just want that, right? Who would win in a fight between the Hulk and Superman? And I love Marvel versus DC, but obviously the 2 or 3 pages, or I guess 4 pages of that fight is nothing, right? It's just like, I hit him really hard, and now it's, I've never been hit that hard. Now it's my turn to hit him this hard am I, and then boom, and then it's over, right? Like, that's kind of what fans might want. So I do appreciate that he's restrained as he writes his characters, but yeah, it's a lot of
this feels like
running around.
This feels like it is more of an actual story. Like, it's interesting. I guess here's a question I would have for you. Reading this story, who feels like the actual protagonist of this tale? Is it Hulk or Superman? Like, who feels like the one who's actually... I don't know. I'm not going to say any more. But, like, who do you feel is the... Obviously, they're co-leads. But who do you think is more the protagonist?
I mean, I would go with Superman, right? Like, they start by going... The premise for the Hulk is he man or monster or both? And so it ends off, by going, hey, he has a really tragic life. And he's a tragic character. And he does both. And Superman, I think at the end, when they're going, like, hey... what's going on, what happened at the end, Superman's like, look, he's not perfect, he has a lot of problems, but he didn't start this fight, right? He was provoked. So yeah, the monster part is fairly thorough throughout the tale, and Superman is the most coherent. He's the one who kind of really leaps into heroic modes, right? He's more,
like, he drives
in charge.
I would say he drives the story, like the actual story. It's interesting in a lot of ways. This is just a Superman story with a character we already know is the other character. Like, you could almost take out the Hulk and have it be any other character, and it would kind of play similar. Obviously, there's certain Hulk trappings, obviously, which feels like very Hulk of the time, which, again, he's playing with what Hulk stories used to be. So this is very much in keeping, if Zach has read the Marvel Masterworks of Hulk, I think if he read this, he'd be like, yeah, that feels like these books. In terms of Hulk kind of has an adventure happen to him as he's trying to cure himself of being the Hulk. Like, that's a lot of early Hulk. Whereas this is Superman investigating something. He's competing with Lois. Like, I actually found a lot of their parts very charming. There's just something to... You actually get to see Clark be a reporter and actually trying to figure something out and trying to investigate a story. I think often the Superman part takes over and we kind of don't get to see Clark doing Clark things. And so this felt more like he's doing both, which I really appreciated. And again, seeing Lois do both. Having her interact with Rick, even briefly, I thought was a nice touch too. So, the more I read it, the more I was like, you know what, this is pretty enjoyable. I actually probably give more credit to the script than I think you do. Because I think, Stern has to figure out, how do you bring these characters together? How do you make it worthy of Steve Rude? And how do you tell a story that kind of, fits the mold of what the artist is going to give you in a way that doesn't feel too anachronistic in terms of the art. So by setting it in the early days of the career, I think that's a very smart play. I think having this version of Lex is really fun to play with too. Not the kind of modern Lex that you would have seen. It is interesting because, you have the framing sequence is very much in the present of this period, because you would have had Superman is married to Lois. You have Bruce mourning the death of Betty, which is kind of a fascinating, rough shot to do. Because, and I've talked with Brevoort before about these types of things, and that, you know, they wanted these storylines to somehow reflect what was going on in the current continuity and not necessarily just be evergreen, so that they wanted you to pick up current books. Like, that's really the point of these, is to, oh, you're a DC fan? Maybe you'll fall in love with Hulk now, and now you want to read a Hulk book. So they, in some way, they have to tee that up. And so it's hard when you're only using it in a framing sequence, is the only part that's current continuity. So that last page is a doozy.
It's really rough.
You know, I mean, and we should say, not rough like a bad, but rough because the character was going through a rough emotional point. And so this whole story is like his early days with Betty and trying to figure out what he likes, and like this woman that he loves, and then we already know as reader, well, you and I know as reader, she's dead at this point in continuity, and so having that kind of hit you like a sledgehammer, you know, especially after the page where like Lois and Clark are like, you know, together and having an idyllic life.
They're cuddling on the couch, and Kal-El's like, we're really lucky. We've been lucky. Some people haven't. And this cuts to a lonely man, just destitute. Sad, I mean, that is the Hulk. I mean, it's the end of every episode of the whole TV show, right? Like the George Lazenby show. It's the Sisyphusian pushing that boulder up the hill, and the Hulk story is always the boulder rolling back down on top of him. Like, that's what you kind of need in a Hulk story. I mean, same true is true with Spider-Man and the X-Men. Like, they're at their best when things are all going bad. I do give credit to Stern for, like, the thing I may be critical or overly critical about with him is there's no new surprises here. And I guess they're not really trying to do that. With a lot of these crossovers, there's not a lot of surprises. I would say the one that maybe gave us the most to play with, or some kind of interesting continuity insights and a little bit of like play, more play or uniqueness, was Claremont's story. Because Claremont's is really just kind of throwing whatever he wants in there, and he's like adding character development that we'll never actually get in X-Men comics. He's like, well, I did it already in the story, so I don't have to do it again. And like you get little morsels, right, of some of these characters that you like can't get anywhere else. So that's kind of a weird, fun, quirky Claremont thing. The storyline is like, Lex Luthor tricked Superman to fighting the Hulk. Like, it's not very unique. I do give credit to the interactions. That was the more enjoyable part. And that's what you want in a mashup, right? You want to see Thunderbolt Ross interacting with Lex Luthor. You absolutely want to see Rick Jones trying to hit on Lois Lane. Obviously, you're going to see Clark talking to Banner, and Betty and Lois, right? So like those were fun. Yeah, what will their personalities be like when they mix? And then even Lex hitting on Betty, which was very uncomfortable, and Rude does an incredible job of showing that. To me, what seemed just uncomfortable, putting his hand on her thigh or her knee, like check in on her. He also like grabs and holds her hand, and then you got Lois, you know, from far away with her binoculars. You got to watch out for this guy. He seems like he's smooth. He's actually a creep, and having some talk in the car later to kind of warn her about Lex. So like those are fun. Yeah, that's the interplay that you really want, and you want to see them use their powers, and they do. And I like that again. It's fairly creative, right? Like, Superman grabs Hulk's leg at one point and just like whirls him around and throws him, right? And he's ricocheting through cacti. Or Hulk hits Superman so hard he throws him up into the upper atmosphere of the planet. He's like, I've never been hit like that before. Those are some fun moments where the name of the game really here is like a good time. It doesn't take itself too seriously. So I think that I think it achieves its mission, if that's its mission.
I do think of all the ones we've read so far, this one feels the most natural in that it doesn't feel like some of the others kind of felt like, I guess some of the ways in which the characters interacted was like, oh, who are you? Like, it felt bigger, like they were trying, and it was later in careers. And I think by making this very early Hulk and early Superman, you buy into the fact that, like, you know, they're just kind of crossing paths and not being like, oh, you've been in New York forever and yet somehow I've never seen you type of thing. Like, I think some of the other books felt they were less natural, and this one again felt like they were merging worlds. And as we said, like all the supporting cast is melding together. Like all these characters are figuring out a way to kind of bring these worlds together. Whereas in some of the other books, you have the main characters crisscrossing, but not a lot else, and there hasn't been a lot else kind of going on. Now, for characters like Batman and Punisher, like obviously they have a limited supporting cast to begin with, but you don't have as much to be able to kind of connect. And even when we did have those characters like Microchip, it was tertiary. It was kind of off to the side. The worlds weren't truly blending. You had people hacking into computers at each other, but they weren't actually sharing space on the screen, like on the panel. Whereas here, you had these worlds actually being merged together, and they felt pretty natural, like a good fit. Like you could see Lex Luthor working with the government. You could see him working with Thunderbolt Ross in this way. So I guess that's where I guess I have to give credit to Stern to kind of figuring out a way to make it work, and that it's not just about the big kind of fisticuffs. As we said, the fisticuffs are almost the afterthought in some ways, and I was already enjoying it just with all the character work because it was just so stylish and fun. And again, Rude does so much good work to make you buy in to actually want to follow these characters. I as I said, I loved Clark as Clark, and him at the planet and trying to scoop Lois scooping his story away from him, and him trying to figure out a way so he can still go there. Like I like that kind of stuff. You talked about anachronisms before. They have cell phones, and yet there's still that kid who's excited that Rick Jones helped them with their ham radio network. So these weird connections, but like it's incredibly charming. And you're right. I don't know if it's as charming without the art. The art is part of what gives it that next level of charm that you're kind of like, yeah, I'm in for the ride. You're reading something that's trying to be different and feels different than any other book on the shelf. And the cover especially would have not looked like anything else really on the shelf at that point in time either. So you have this book that very much stands out, and then the art definitely kind of carries that forward.
Yeah, I remember this cover on the shelves at the time. Didn't pick it up. Again, I just wasn't really into crossovers beyond Marvel versus DC, like the Amalgam stuff, which is, I guess, strange. Like you were saying before, I agree. Claremont's Teen Titans X-Men that I remember talking with you about it, saying like the Teen Titans are almost superfluous here. They're just kind of around. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he kind of wants to tell the story he wants to tell with the characters that are important to him. And even though Superman drives most of the story, and I would agree that it is more of a Superman story, and you could swap out Hulk. I like Hulk has stuff to do. Mm-hmm. Betty not so much, but Hulk and Rick have things to do. Yeah. Thunderbolt Ross has stuff to do. So it does feel in many ways like a Hulk story, right? Like it feels familiar. So I think that's a nice balance. I like how Stern just kind of points out, and he goes, look, we have two characters here who actually have a lot more in common than they can do big punches. They're two bespectacled men who fight the military-industrial complex, right? Like that's and that's why I think Thunderbolt Ross and Lex go so well together. They just are like, yeah, okay, this is a military contract that Lex had, and he sold them weapons, and then now the general's like, okay, we're going to use this weapon, and we have a big gun, and Lex wants the big gun because that can help him kill the alien. And at one point, Stern goes, I think Lex is talking. He's like, yeah, we don't know what the Hulk is. We don't know where he came from. We don't know if he was made by Banner. We don't know if he was an alien that Banner found. I don't know. I just like that there's a little hint that he could also be an alien. So, like, he's like, I love to kill aliens. I want to kill a Hulk alien. I want to kill a Superman alien. So there's enough of a tether there that we are kind of two peas in a pod. And it's no surprise that in the third act, the climax, where they're just like, oh, no, we're being shot by a big gun. They're just like, you want to do this thing? I love that there's just that moment of like, they have a punch up because there was a misunderstanding because you have to do that. I would love for someone to break that formula. I would love for them to do a different way to have a team up. But then like, oh no, we're being shot. And then just like Superman's like, then we must stop it. And then hands go out in this kind of beautiful friendship moment. I'm with you. That's it. Hulk's with them now. He's like, I'm incurable rage and I will know my vengeance. It's like, how about we stop the big gun? I'm there. And then they do a big fastball special. So I'm like, okay, it's just like again, because of the spirit of this whole book being this throwback, that's enough of a solution, right? Mm-hmm. We're in pain. And I do like how it's green. And Stern doesn't go this far, but I'm like, look, we know kryptonite has radiation. And it's a green radiation. Mm. he doesn't. I don't know if there were rules around this. I don't know if DC was like, look, you cannot say that he's weak to gamma. You can't say that. Oh, maybe in Marvel universe, gamma is just kryptonite, and like. But he does say this hurts a whole lot. Okay, this is bad. Mm-hmm. I am not impervious to this. That's enough, I guess. But the swirling green smoke, it gives so much like kryptonite ray to me. But yeah, so it's still fun how they solve it, and Hulk becomes a missile, and Rude draws the crap out of this.
Yeah, looking at the fight sequence between them, like the different ways. Like, you could just have two punch boys just punching each other, right? And as you kind of alluded to, that's kind of what we had space for in Marvel vs. DC. Like, they really just had space for, I'm going to punch you, and then you're going to punch me, and that's it. Whereas here, as you said, like, you have Rude really playing with these two characters who could do a lot of things with their strength. So as you said, like, you have Superman whirling him around, and then just the effect afterwards of the Hulk ping-ponging through cacti, which is really
so creative.
Like, he didn't just show him going and flinging into a cacti. He's bouncing between cacti like a pinball, and then when you have him taking all the kind of the spine, the pricklies out of his body, putting them in his mouth, and then shooting them at Superman. Like, that's again smart too, because we know that he can do stuff like that. So why not kind of have fun with the form?
This missile fight where Hulk's throwing the missiles and Superman is jumping between the missiles. That's a very classic Superman.
I really enjoyed how he did that, because it's not Superman like flying through it. He's kind of awkwardly like jumping through it, and like you get a different sense of motion. Even earlier on that page where you have that, you know, the vehicle with all the missiles get hit, like that's a really evocative image. Like, it really does look like something shook this vehicle and has caused all these missiles to get dislodged everywhere. Like, I just thought actually, and even the page afterwards where you have all the military all kind of setting up with all their guns, it made me feel like, has Rude done war comics? Because this made me think that I want to read a Steve Rude war comic, because the detail on the military and the vehicles, like, some people do really good vehicles and some people can't. And you can tell when they kind of take shortcuts if they can't really do it. Whereas here I'm like, oh, he can do tech. Like, he can do real tech, not just, you know, out there Kirby tech, or as you said, more Superman era tech. But he's just doing regular technology, and yet it looks so believable.
Yeah, the detail of the assault rifle, the foreground, the soldier, and even the time he spends on the netting on the helmet and the shading on the netting. Again, those dark blacks are so good in this. Like, I am so pleased. I don't know what the paper quality was for the original printing. It was probably quite good considering how much the comic cost, but the reproduction here in the omnibus, very, very nice glossy paper, and it picks up the blacks so well. So I'm just happy to have this on my shelf because of this showcase of different artists. But the colors are so great and the dark blacks are so great. And yeah, you're right. The detail in that one panel alone, a lot of the actual Jeep military stuff, missiles, all that, he's putting chain link fencing in and he doesn't have to. So it does seem like if he hasn't done a military comic, he should. Like a Sergeant Rock or a Howling Commandos would be really up his alley. And then the kinetic kind of fury when he's packing so much of these panels also makes me think of when the Hulk gets thrown into the gamma gun. And then, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but again, so much energy. But then Luthor's toady, Sydney, right, gets blasted back. Mr. Luthor! It's just gone. Almost like becomes like plastered against the inside of a wall or something. I just thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know. I guess that's what happens when you follow a crazed maniac. Maybe you become the center of violence, and and in the midst of him almost dying, Luthor going, "Shield me, Sydney." So yeah, you can see his villainous, unscrupulous side just oozing out. So yeah, good, really fun.
Again, old school Superman, like when you have Luthor trying to escape and just Superman just kind of lands and just goes, "Going somewhere, gentlemen." That feels old school. Like, that doesn't feel like new school Superman. And I mean that in a good way. I don't mean that in a pejorative. There's just something very charming about that. Now, I wonder
the silent touching down when everything is foregrounded and there's this shadow of him coming softly into the background. Really nice, very subtle. Again, in a more modern comic, there might be a temptation for the artist to splash page that, right? This giant low camera angle shot and the glorious sun behind him, and it's really kind of gratuitous almost. But just to have a gentle little, nope, remember me? It was really nice. Sorry, what you were saying?
Well, I want to go back. So in the collection, this is page 908. So that page I was mentioning with the, all the military kind of setting up against that Jeep. I want to just make one mention of something. So Olaf does great work for the colors in this issue, but the panel right above that is probably the brightest green that we've seen in the entire issue for the Hulk. And it did take me out of it for a moment because it didn't feel... There's something about the coloring there felt flatter than the more modern green coloring that we used in the rest of the book. And I don't know if that bumped you at all or if that was something that you had noticed, or... Because it definitely kind of took me out for a second, because just that panel, the colors felt a little louder and a little bit more garish on the green than anywhere else in the issue.
It did jump out to me, the other you're saying, and I could see it. That's actually all the negative space, like the lack of a background, sandwiched between so many panels. Like the missiles having lack of background, that's fine, because there's just so much happening.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a bit strange. But yeah, I guess maybe Soups hit him so hard he knocked the color off him a little bit or something. I don't know. But yeah,
made him greener.
Noticeable. Yeah, as you do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you just made him that angry that he was just bringing out all that green, right?
We'll have to do an experiment later on the weekend. You can throw something really hard at me and see if it turns green or I do.
I mean, that sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah, okay, never mind. Cheerfully withdrawn.
So, overall, we had talked about a few different things we could read, so it sounds like you're pretty pleased with the choice you made.
No, yeah, as soon as I realized that this was the Rude comic that I had seen on the shelves but never read, I was like, oh, this is great. Because the last thing you want is just a story about, we're going to do a big punch-up, and the art is a chore. And I'm glad to see that this is just beautiful comics.
It's interesting. It's an interesting cover, too, right? Because it's still Rude, very definitively Rude, but there is such a different... It's a different flavor when you have more of the painted look on the cover as opposed to... And so part of me is like... Because when I saw this when I was younger, I think I thought that the interiors were going to match. And I didn't know if I wanted to read that, per se. Not that I have anything against painted comics, but there is a different feel to them. And so I don't know if that maybe dissuaded me when I was younger. No, I would have been a stupid 15-year-old when this came out, so who knows? And I don't know if I would necessarily would have spent the money to buy it, because it wasn't Spider-Man or X-Men, which were my, the big ones I was reading at this time. But it does make me curious, because there is such a very different flavor. It's the same artist, but the colors and the fact that one is painted, one isn't, adds everything.
Yeah, I think it was the opposite for me. I think I may remember flipping through this and not being painted. So I'm like, okay, so what you promised in the cover is not delivered inside, and really didn't give it a chance. I also wouldn't have had the sensibilities to have enjoyed this at the time. Like this is a much kind of more, I'm going to compliment myself briefly, more mature, I think, kind of appreciation I have now for art. And I really don't, I was really looking for the splash pages. I was looking for Jim Lee mimics, over-rendered, musculature and stuff like that. So this would have seemed quaint to me or uninteresting in a way now, where I'm like, no, that I would actually love to hunt down the issue and see if I can find it in a dollar bin on our travel someday.
I don't think it's in a dollar bin, but I think you will find it for discounted.
Cross my fingers. Maybe I'll break my rule and go to $2 one day.
Ooh, okay. Then I think you might find it somewhere.
What did I get the Gen X Gen 13? Gen X Gen 13 crossover. Did I find that for like 50 cents or $1 or something?
Yeah, we're not equating the similar things here.
I think you and all your fans can agree, without any further argument, that the Gen X Gen 13 crossover is equal to Hulk Superman, and also the popularity of those characters.
Oh yeah, because they're still around. I'm going to read Gen 13 205 soon. So
you can ask a teenager on the street, like, "Hey, you enjoy Gen 13 or Gen X?" And they're like, "Please get away from me."
Gen 13. I would love to be like, Zach, Gen 13. He's like, what? Why? What is this?
What an era. I have to find. I picked up a few of those issues. I think I found them at 50 cent bin. I'm like, I should read some of these and see if they hold up. I know they won't hold up. I have not opened them. I don't.
I feel that way Like, I remember as a kid, when I was much younger, like, I read a few issues of, like, Danger Girl, and I remember liking it, but, like, probably not for the right reasons.
Oh, no. Yeah, well, yeah, it's like, well, this is a very good pastiche of James Bond, everyone. Like, yeah, okay. We know that you didn't buy that for James Bond, because there's a James Bond comic over there. Not interested.
I want a pastiche of James Bond. I don't want James Bond himself.
J. Scott Campbell, man. What a career, eh? He's had, and now he's a cover man. He does a lot of covers.
Yeah, he doesn't really do interiors. Remember for like 10 years they kept promising he was working on the interiors of a Spider-Man book?
Oh, yeah, that was a big thing, but he was just doing amazing covers for the longest time. Yeah.
Longest time. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Well, I think about a lot of things about, you know, how the comics that we were reading, how they would be viewed today, how people would think about them, because comics are so different now. The sensibilities are so different, so I'm curious always. Zach is in the middle of doing a major Daredevil read, which I've told you about. He's in the Brubaker run now. Now, when he was done the Bendis run, he's like, I really like Milla. And I'm like, sorry, kid.
Oh, well, sad. Yeah.
That's not going to end well.
Gets involved with a woman. That woman won't be around for much longer.
It won't. Although I will say, I think there's one who has...
I mean, Echo's still around.
Yeah, Echo's still around, and I think Kristen McDuffie's still around, not with him, but she's still around in the world. Not as prominent a character as, I guess, Echo is.
They
but
can't stop killing Elektra. It's just like Jean Grey, just get her as many times as you can.
Yeah, she's died a lot more times than Jean Grey.
She has, yeah, technically, yes.
Or at least it feels that way.
Yeah.
It's funny because he was like, "Oh, Elektra's back." I'm like, "Yeah, you better get used to that. Like, she's too marketable a character to keep dead."
But also ninja magic, so that's important to remember.
Love ninja magic, but yeah, it's been really interesting having him go through Daredevil because there's so many different pockets of Daredevil when different creators have worked on him, and the way the character functions is different. Everything about the book is different with all these different creators, and I would say pound for pound, Daredevil seems to have the best series of writers and artists come on the book, like to do really seminal runs. Like you have a Bendis run, you have a Brubaker run, you have a tremendous Mark Waid run, like you have Chip Zdarsky's run, like obviously the Miller run, you have Nocenti, like you have these creators that have done these fantastic eras where I don't think you can point to Spider-Man in the same way.
Oh man, poor Spider-Man.
I know, right? That character should get a better book.
I'll say 2 words: Gil Kane. That's all you need.
He's done both.
Yeah. No, I mean, that'd be an interesting thing to go through and try to track it. I mean, long storied careers, like, you know, or histories of like Batman, you got to figure there's plenty of really good stuff in there as well, and also a Miller and Adams. It'd be interesting to track it. I mean, if we're just doing writers, you're not doing artists, because I mean, X-Men had so many bangers in terms of like incredible all-star artists.
That's true.
Some people say like Claremont gets a little bit too much credit for his era, even though he should get credit, just because he was lucky or was able to pull strings or favors with editors and just get incredible artists all the way through, you know, Paul Smith and Silvestrines and Jim Lee, right, who like helped to sell the most single issue comics of anyone ever. Mm-hmm. So that would be interesting to kind of go through that and see, what superhero comic has the most highly regarded runs, very, very, very quality runs that are still worth reading. Be interesting to find out. And
there's more sustained runs, because it's not just 6 issues, right? Like you have, and I guess that's why it's probably easier to look at it from a writer's perspective, because they run the narrative more, and like the book might obviously feel different under different artists, but they're more likely to change, and especially in the modern era, they're not going to be on every issue, whereas the writer will be, so it's probably easier to kind of look at it from a writer's perspective. But yeah, I would think about it, but I do think Daredevil probably is up there because of how many runs it's had. That's all.
Well, sadly, it's not Superman or the Hulk.
No, no, it is not. So It'll be interesting. Like, I don't know when we're going to get back next to the DC versus Marvel omnibus, but I'm excited. As we talked about off podcast, I believe next year is the 50th anniversary of Superman and Spider-Man, so that feels like a natural one for us to cover. I'm hoping you're right. Maybe we can get Paul to read it. It's 100 pages of 70s goodness. I'm very excited about reading it with you guys. I read it a long time ago. I don't think I've read it since I've had the Omni, so I'm very excited to go through that one. But that'll be a future book of the month, so months down the road when we're in the middle of 2026. But I'm excited to continue our journey through this omnibus and justify its existence on our shelf a little bit more.
Can't wait. I think I would have enjoyed getting it anyway, but it is much more enjoyable with you and doing a double, whatever it's called, double identity. I forget already the name of the issue. With two people, with two readers is better than if I was reading it on my own, right? So yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting too, right? Because I think the other DC versus Marvel omnibus, which is the Amalgam Age, like that one was a day one buy for you because you love DC versus Marvel. You liked a lot of the Amalgam stuff. You own a lot of that stuff, but there was just something about having it collected, I know, which was important. And I think you were at least at the beginning, I think, more on the fence about the DC versus Marvel omnibus because it has all these one shots and stuff that would be fun to read, and we were obviously having a lot of fun reading them. But you didn't have that same visceral reaction of like, I need this on my shelf. But I think part of the this may never come back again kind of mentality of it made it easier for you to be like, okay, I guess I'll take the leap. And I think, you gotta, I think is the first one the one that we both got that really good price on Amazon, that out of nowhere?
Yeah, I think it was the first. Yeah, it was the first one. Yeah. Which I don't know what accounts for that, but yeah, I mean, and for me, I think I remember telling you this, that it was Claremont's X-Men Teen Titans, right? I'm like, look, if I'm going to make a commitment to collecting as much of the Claremont era as I can in actual physical comics, I would need to get this or the original book. And I don't know how much the original book goes for the aftermarket, but once we found that Amazon incredibly cheap copy, I'm like, okay, well, that's done. I have to get this. And it's been a pleasure to be able to go back and just have nonsense, silly fun. And also experience more of comics history. Kind of hard to beat this, really, when you think about it, especially what we paid for it. For sure.
It's been a great experience. Well, again, thank you so much for coming back for a Book of the Month Club to talk about, The Incredible Hulk versus Superman. For those who are listening, you can email us at comicshenanigans@gmail.com, rate the show on Apple Podcasts, listen to us on Apple Podcasts, and also listen to us on Spotify. Upcoming episodes include Conor McCreary coming back to talk about his upcoming graphic novel, which is coming out, I guess, in the second week of October, I believe, or the first full week of October. No, second full week of October. We have an upcoming episode with Chuck Austin coming back with Pat Olaf to talk about The Call, which is actually a fan-requested episode. A listener really appreciated the conversations I've had with Chuck Austin and had asked, could you ever do a creator commentary on The Call? And I'm like, well, let's ask them. So we're going to have that episode coming up next month, and other goodies coming along the way. Hopefully another Ron Friends episode before you know it, and that'll bring us into November. But again, thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you, Nate, for joining me. This was tremendous fun, and thanks again for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.